Hi there, beautiful people. Happy Saturday. I've been working on some artwork and I wanted to answer some questions through a video. Certainly not a tutorial by any means, but just answer some questions about how I do some of this composite digital painting. So I put together a few clips to kind of walk through the process of how many images come to try to match what I have in my head. It's quite a process. I'd say anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. Sometimes it's taken as much as 7 or 8, even with the working in digital as opposed to acrylics. But it's a cool process that I very much enjoy. And the piece I finished this morning I call "Isn't She Lovely?" And I got the idea because last weekend I kept seeing butterflies flying about outside here, and I was like, I think an art piece was born last weekend. So, all right, here we go. First thing I did was grab this landscape from Tarangire National Park, and I removed 2 giraffe from it. Then I took a picture of my niece that my sister-in-law sent me. I had asked for this specific pose, and I'm going to make a selection around it, remove her from this background, and take her and put her in Africa. And here is how that works. And then I'm going to start to tweak it a little bit, clean up around the edges. I'm rolling this a lot faster than it actually goes in real time, but I'm not trying to make it perfect because I don't need that in what I'm doing. So anyway, just getting her cleaned up as much as I can for my purposes. Now I'm going to take her and stick her in Tarangire National Park. And then I'm going to put some animals in there with her in the same way that I'm moving her about here, picking where I want her to be. I'm going to do the same thing with several animals to form a composition. And please take note, beautiful people, that is the Florida State butterfly she is presenting to the animals. Then I decided I wanted some trees in the background, so I took another landscape from, I think it was Ngorongoro Crater, and I slipped it back behind those mountains there and cleaned it up a bit. So you can see in the far distance, it's a different background. And now I've got my secretary bird, my giraffe, my elephant, and the butterfly, and Avery. And I'm going to throw in some clouds and mist here just to start to create the kind of dreamlike feeling that I want. And now I also want, the elephant to dip his trunk a little more towards the butterfly, so I'm trying to figure that out here. And I also want the giraffe to crane his head a little more, and for the secretary bird to tilt there. So you can see I'm using what's called the puppet warp tool, and I'm just tweaking those details to make everybody sort of really come and look at this beautiful butterfly. And so one of the things about composites is that as it starts to come together, you notice places where you need something, and of course I noticed that I need something there to cover up the front of that giraffe because you can't see his legs. So I'm like, do I want a rock? Do I want a shrub? Whatever. I grab shrubs from another one of my photos, and I tweak them, and then I place them in the orientation in the place that I want. So I did a lot of work in Photoshop, adding clouds, creating sort of a feel that I want, and now I've brought it back into Lightroom where I'm going to do some additional tweaks with exposure and S-curves and highlights. Before I then start to work with what are called my presets, I have a group of favorites, and presets are just settings. They're filters that you can create that have specific settings for the clarity and exposure and the blacks and the whites and whatever, and you can just apply these to your photos. You can save them and apply them, and I have a lot of those. And then I then take my composition through a series of those to see what I like. And now I've always been a stickler for certain things, and I can see at the end that I've looked, and I have something that bothers me. I don't much like that point on the neck of the secretary bird, so I'm going to go in and I'm just going to find a way to fix that up. There are a million ways to do just any one thing in Photoshop, and I'm just going to choose a simple way and paint over that little point on his neck, kind of clean that up a little bit. And then at the end, I literally go back and forth a bajillion times trying to make my final selection of what will be the master copy. And I'll usually have a couple of different versions of the piece. And there you have it. That's how I made Isn't She Lovely?